Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Immigration Options for Physicians Q&A session. This is basically a time for those who are on the webinar to ask any questions that they might have about immigration for physicians. But before we go on, I want to make sure that everyone can hear me. So if you can hear me, please indicate in the chat button or chat panel or write in the chat that you can hear. So write yes if you can hear me. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, as I mentioned, this is a Q&A session where any questions related to J1 waivers, H1Bs, any immigration options for physicians. If you have any specific questions that you would like to have answered, then please go ahead and ask your question now. We have just a few people on the webinar today, so that might be pretty short, but I did want to give the opportunity for those who are on the presentation to ask any questions. I'm assuming that you are either physicians or in the medical field. So as I mentioned, you can ask your questions using the Q&A option, which is that little bubble that has a question mark in your panel. So if you go into that panel, you can type in your questions. But before we do that, just to update basically in terms of immigration for physicians. So one of the options or one of the ways that physicians that to come to the U.S. in order to become or foreign national physicians to come to the U.S. to become physicians is through the J1 visa program. So in that program, of course, you commit, if you get a J1 visa in order to do clinical training, whether it's a fellowship or residency, you agree that you will return back to your home country after your residency or fellowship program is over. And you agree that you will return back for at least 2 years before you would be eligible for either an H1B or permanent resident status. So, of course, many physicians who do come to the U.S. using the J1 visa for their training do want to remain afterwards and are engaged in active job search. So in most cases, if you are that type of, or if you have done your training with that J1 visa, you will need a waiver of the 2-year home residence requirement or that agreement that you made to return back. So waivers are actually have become more plentiful over the past few years because of certain waiver programs that have opened up. So typically the waiver programs are programs where you as a J1 physician and your potential employer agree that you will work in an underserved area or in some cases areas that have underserved populations or treat underserved populations. So in the past, we only had the Conrad 30 program, and in some cases, some federal programs such as the Appalachian Regional Commission, also the VA, Veterans Administration, and a couple of other programs. So I'll just briefly talk about the fact that there are about, I think, 6 programs now for J1 waivers. One would be, again, still the Conrad 30 program, which is allots 30 J1 waiver spots for each state. So if you are applying for a J1 waiver through the Conrad 30 program, you're actually applying first to the State Department of Health, and they will administer that program. It is limited because you have 30 slots. available. So if there are more than 30 applicants for those waivers in any given time, then you may not be eligible or able to, you may not receive one of those slots. Every state has its own requirements as to what the application process is, what documents are required, but essentially those are the typical options for J1 physicians who want to get a waiver. However, there are other federal programs administered by federal agencies that also have their own requirements, but in most cases there's not a limit to the numbers of waivers that they can recommend. So that oftentimes we see as an option that more and more physicians are taking advantage of, such as the Appalachian Regional Commission, or the ARC, which covers many states from the Northeast to the Southeast. So if you're going to practice in those areas and you are in an underserved area, and in some cases, and actually, even if you're a specialist or a primary care physician, you could be eligible for that type of waiver. There's also the Delta Regional Authority, or DRA, which also sponsors specialists and primary care physicians in about 8 states, which kind of goes from Illinois through Missouri, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and a few other states as well. So if you are, again, practicing those areas and you qualify, those areas qualify as underserved areas, and that is another option that physicians can take advantage of. And again, these federal options are not limited to the 30 per state, unlike the Conrad 30 program. We also have a recent program that started back in September of 2022, which is the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission, which also is a federal agency that has an unlimited number of J1 waiver slots. And they, very similar to the DRA or even the ARC, cover certain regions of the country, which is mainly the Southeast region, as the name implies. So if you are working in specific counties or locations where the Southeast region commission is actually covers, then you could be eligible. One I guess exciting thing for many people who are interested, or many doctors who are interested in working in Florida, we often get, excuse me, a lot of physicians that are interested in Florida. There is no limit or there's no, all of Florida is covered by the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission. So if you are going to work in an underserved area in Florida, whether it's primary care or a specialty, that is also a good option outside of the Florida State Conrad 30 J1 waiver program. And then the last agency that has been around for a while is the Department of Health and Human Services. We are seeing more and more applicants to the Department of Health and Human Services because it is, excuse me, as I mentioned, a federal agency, but it covers all of the United States. So if you are working in an underserved area in any state and you are going to, if you're going to work in primary care only, DHHS does not take or does not accept specialist applications. But if you're going to be in primary care, and that includes hospitalist positions, then the DHHS could be a good option if the location is in an underserved or health professional shortage area that has at least a score of 7 or above. So in our practice, again, we are seeing more and more physicians taking advantage of, or physicians and their potential employers taking advantage of these various federal options in addition to the state programs as well. So if you have any questions about those particular programs, then feel free to let me know. So that's kind of really the only update that I have with respect to J1 physicians. Again, I don't see any questions here. So if you don't have, I'll just leave a little bit of more time for anyone who might have a question. But if you don't have a question, but you would need assistance later or would like to have information more specific to your case, then please feel free to reach out to us. Um, Basically, our contact information is here. You can go to our website at physicianimmigration.com, fill out our contact us form to schedule a consultation to discuss any specific cases that you have. Okay, well, I think there are no questions at this point. So thank you all for attending. I know this was a short session, but we did want to have the opportunity for those who were on the call to be able to ask any specific questions. And hopefully if the J1 waiver information was relevant to you, hopefully there will be some information there that you could use. But again, if you do have any specific questions related to your case, then please feel free to reach out to us at any of these contact methods. Well, thank you again for attending. Have a great